All right, let's grab our Bibles, and if everybody wants to, in the middle of each table, there's some of these papers. You may want to reference. There's not enough for everybody to have one necessarily, but if you share, I'm positive you're able to do that. So this gives a little map, because we're going to go through a lot of places nobody's ever heard of. Places a lot of them don't exist anymore. So we're going to go through this, but we've been going through the study of Abraham and Sarah, looking at the general topic of letting go. Letting go of the things of the world and holding on to God. And in some cases, Abraham and Sarah did a good job, like letting go of worldly security, right? Security of family, of homestead, of inheritance, and those kinds of things. And when God came to Abram and said, you need to leave and just follow me wherever I take you, he said, okay. Took his family and went. Truly amazing, especially given the times. And he left all of the worldly security and went off and followed God, right? Then we saw worldly fears. Well, sometimes they didn't do so good, right? They went up to Egypt because there was famine in the land, and while there, they allowed worldly fears to overcome them. And he ended up telling everybody that Sarah was his sister, not his wife, which ended up with plagues on Pharaoh's household, which he wasn't too happy about. But God did bless them still, right? God still watched out for them and took care of them. They should have known that going in, right? So we had a nice big A for his efforts there, and not so good. I think we got to end up with a D on the worldly fears part. And then last week we saw, as they came back from Egypt, Lot had a lot of herds and everything. Abram had a lot of herds and things, and they started battling each other. Their herdsmen were fighting each other over land, over grass, over water. So they said, we got to split. And he gave Lot the choice, right? And what did Lot see? That was a problem, wasn't it? What did he see? He saw the land on the other side. If you look on your map, you can kind of see this discussion started over here in Bethel by the city of Ai over there. And he looked on the other side of the Jordan, and he saw that it was beautiful. Lots of grazing land, lots of grass, a lot of trees, a lot of stuff. And he said, that's where I want to go. So he headed out and went to the great cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and all those wonderful places and said, that's where I want to be. Because with his eyes, he had that perspective, right? What is good? What is valuable? Well, we've got to let go of that, don't we? We've got to let go of what appears to us, or appears to society, or appears to the world to be good and valuable, and instead trust who? Trust God. Now, Abram probably was a little annoyed. He probably has the same perspective, right? That's why I think God had to give him a little pep talk. It's like, don't worry about it. Look out. I'm going to give you all of this, and it's going to be what? Great, right? I will take care of you. If we've got God, that doesn't matter what the world calls good or what the world calls valuable. We have the most valuable thing, right? And that's that relationship with God. He will take care of us. So, plus, when we use our eyes to make decisions, our own perspectives and ideas, we also end up a lot of times in problems, don't we? And how long did it take Lot to end up in problems? Not very long. In fact, let's go to it. Let's go to Genesis chapter 14. And we're going to have some kings of the north decide to head on down south and raid everybody. So this is going to be one of those days you're going to be very happy we're not going around the room and having people read. A lot of strange names in here, but I'm sure back then they were very common, right? Everybody called their kids these things. But we'll see. Genesis chapter 14, verse 1. It came to pass in the days of Arampel, king of Shinar, Ariah, king of Elasar, well, that's the worst one, and it's the big one. It's the one that everybody, it's the main one. That's why we're going to call him, as we always do, Cheddar. Okay? He's a bad guy. I don't care. I'll call him what I want to call him. He's Cheddar, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations. So he had many nations, many areas. And they were all, if you look at your map, they were up here. Just up there. And they decided to run down into the land of Canaan. And these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemember, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. So they're going to come down here, and they're going to make war with the people down here. And who lives down there? Lot lives down there. Lot lives in the area, he lives in Sodom, right? So he lives down there. So they're going to come down and make war. And how are they going to do this? Verse 3. And these were joined together in the vale, or the valley of Siddim, which is the Salt Sea. You'll see the Salt Sea on the map there. That's that lower area there. 12 years they served Cheddar, and in the 13th year they rebelled. Okay? So they came down and they took the area. So they've been kind of in control. So how soon after Lot moved there did these kings come down and basically put them under attacks and put them under their control and things like that? Probably not very long. Now, after 12 years of being under there, Sodom and Gomorrah and those guys say, we're going to get out from under this. Are they? No, they're not. So, verse 15, in the 14th year came Cheddar and the kings that were with him and smote. If you look on your map, they decided to make a little road trip. So first they're going to do the Rephaims in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, and you can tell Ashtaroth is a goddess that everybody was worshiping up there, so you get where you get that name. And the Zuzims, how do you like to be the Zuzims? Yeah, the Zuzims. In Ham, and the Emims in Shaveth, Kiriathaim. So they come down here and they take out the Rephaims, the Zuzims, and the Emims. Okay? That's why I did the map. That's why you have no idea where these people are. But they're coming down this side of the Jordan, right? They're just taking city after city after city and fighting with them. And then they went to the Horites in Mount Seir. So they came down to the Horites. So they just kept going. On down. And they returned and came, the Horites of Mount Seir are unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came to Enishpat, which is in Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites that dwell in Hazezon Tamar. Again, aren't you glad you're not reading today? That's right. And there went out of the kings of Sodom and the kings of Gomorrah and the kings of Admah and the kings of Zoaim and the king of Bela, which is Zoar, and they joined battle with them in the vale of Siddim. So here's basically what it's saying, is they decided to march on down, because there's rebellion down here. So they decided to make a little road trip and come down here and just start attacking city after city. They're just wreaking havoc. They're just taking stuff, running through. Who's stopping them? Nobody's stopping them. And they go down, they come back over here, and they're making this trip, and where's their last stop? Their last stop is going to be Sodom and Gomorrah and those countries. So those kings get up and say, we're going to stop them. They're not. They go to battle with them, and what happens? Verse 9. So they joined battle with them in the valley of Siddim, with Cheddar the king of Elam, with Tidal the king of nations, and Amraphel king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elzai, 4 kings with 5. So Sodom and Gomorrah have 5. These kings are 4. But who's bigger? 4. Who's going nonstop, just like knife through butter through all this stuff? This is a formidable army, isn't it? And they're just going like crazy through them. Verse 10, and the valley of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and they that remained fled to the mountain. So it was not successful. And they, who's they? Well, Cheddar and company, those 4 kings. They took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. So they took all the goods, all the gold and silver and clothing and anything of value, and all their food and things they need for living, and they headed off back. So where are they going? They're going back up here, right? They're just going to ride across there. Verse 12, and they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And by his goods, that was family and everybody. I mean, it just took all of the good people. And it just took them captive, and they're going to run back up and go back up the way. So Now, why does it give us all? That's a lot of detail, isn't it? I agree that's a lot of detail. What should we learn from this? We should learn from this army is unstoppable. Could the Rephaim stop them? No. The Zuzim stop them? Emims? The Horites? The Amalekites? The Amorites? Remember the Amalekites and Amorites? They're formidable people, aren't they? I mean, who can stop them? Nobody. And the 5 armies of Sodom and Gomorrah in this valley of Cinnamon, they couldn't stop them. And I point this out, and I think this is why the Bible points it out, is this is a big group of well-trained, formidable army. Who can stop them? If you were here this morning, you would know who's really in control. And who's really in control? God is in control. So, what happened next? Verse 13. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite. So over here, plain of Mamre, he's over here. So somebody ran from this valley here, ran around and came to the plain of Mamre to find Abram, probably because he knew, hey, your nephew's taken, right? He had some relationship there. He said, okay, we need to tell him what happened. And this Amorite is the brother of Eshcol, the brother of Anar, and they were confederate with Abraham. So there were some people there who had gotten along with Abram, right? And they could get along with them. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken, Lot, he armed his trained servants born in his house, 318, and pursued them under Dan. So you get this picture of this army that cannot be stopped. Cities cannot stop them. Armies cannot stop them. They're just running through, taking everything in sight, like locusts. And Abram hears that his nephew's in trouble and says, okay, you servants. What are they trained to do? Serve. They're the sheep herders. They're the camel herders. They're the farmers. Yes, they were probably trained to a certain extent. They had some weapons and things like that. You had to have that, right? You had to be able to protect yourself when you're kind of sitting out there. But still, 318. Now, he did have some Confederates. He had some other people there that could help him, right? That would go with him as well. But this is a traveling army going up against a huge army, isn't it? And look what happens. Verse 15, and he divided himself against them, he and his servants by night, and smote them and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. So he hit them here at Dan. Now, get the timing down. Isn't that nice? They start heading up that way. He hears about it here, and he's able to go so fast. He actually catches up with them, and they both meet there, right there at Dan. And he chases them from there all the way to Hobah, which is just north of, a little off the map, north of Damascus. And he chases them down the whole way. Who wins? Abram. That's called what? Faith, right? He was trusting who? God. That me and my servants, one man and his servants, not a city, not a town, not a fortified, but me and my guys could go and take out this army that had done such damage. And did God give them the victory? Yep. Verse 16, and he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. God is good, isn't he? It just got them all, right? Now, interesting thing happens. What grade would you give Abraham so far? Hey, man, it's just faith, right? Let's just go. He's going to turn that into an A+. Because of what happens next. And this is the real message of letting go. Obviously, he let go of his fears, right? Did a good job this time. He's trusting God, and God is going to bless me, right? So I can go, and it's going to be okay, and we'll get them back. God is with us. He let go of his perspectives of, hey, that's a big army. How in the world can our little group of people take care of that? He didn't worry about that stuff, right? Didn't worry about security. Well, we'll go meet them and fight them anywhere, right? Let's just go and do this. Good job. Look what happens next, though. This is the important part, verse 17. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Cheddar. I like that word. It wasn't just a rout. It's not like they just came and scared them away.
It's also not like they just went in and snuck Lot out.
No.
Called stuff. That means
They slaughtered the army and then took all the stuff. That's what they did with God's help. And of the kings which were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. He's referenced back in Hebrews. Jesus is one after the order of Melchizedek. And if you look on your map, Salem is just north of Mamre. So that's where Salem is at. It's on his side. So maybe they had some relationships. I don't know. Back then, 15 miles is a lifetime. So you don't necessarily go visit your neighbors. I don't know how far that is, but probably a little bit of a distance between them. But he hears about all of this, and he comes to meet him as well. And he is the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed Abraham and said, "Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth." Abram's not the possessor of heaven and earth. God is the possessor of earth. Because God is in control, right? It is his. "And blessed be the Most High God, which has delivered thine enemies into thy hand." And he gave him tithes of all. Okay? So here we have Melchizedek coming and blessing him, right? But in doing so, recognizes that who won the war? God did. Who gets all the credit? God did. That's very important for us too, right? We don't want Abraham getting a big head here, thinking he's doing all this. Verse 21, "And then the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons and take the goods to yourself." That's a pretty good deal, right? So I want the people back. Right. Bring back all the people they took and all the women and kids and the adults, bring them back to me, but you can keep all the goods. Basically giving him the treasures of Sodom and Gomorrah and Rephaim and Admah and Zebulun. He said, basically, I'm giving you the treasures, you can keep them. How many would take that deal? I mean, come on, Abraham, who did all the work here? Who put their life on the line here, right? Who's the one that was able to do it, right? So Abraham could have said, yeah, I'll take that. That seems fair. But did he? Verse 22. "And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich." He even gives the reason. I won't even take a thread. I won't take a shoe latchet. I won't take anything to repair anything I've got. I won't take a single dime from you. Because otherwise you will be able to say somewhere down the road, I made him rich. He's blessed because of me. And Abraham always wanted everybody in the world to know the only reason he is blessed is because of who? Because of God. Is that a wise man? How many agree he just went from A to A+? Although, verse 24, "Save only that which the young men have eaten." You can't give that back. Don't charge me for that. It's been a long trip, right? And what can young men do? Eat a lot. Especially after they've been fighting. "And the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion." So the other people, he had his servants, but he also did have those other people from the valley of Mamre, these other people. Hey, if they want to take a portion to them, that's fine. You can say later on that you bless them, that's fine. But as for me, I will only take my blessings from the Lord, so everybody will know that God is my God. Right? And what is he basically doing? He's letting go of worldly what? Pleasures. He's not looking at how can I benefit? How can I find greater security? How can I benefit and move forward myself? How can I be more important? How can I be more powerful? What can I get out of this? Instead, it was let God decide. Right? Now, how many of us could think through this and say, well, it must be God's will that Sodom give me all this stuff, right? Because, why else would they offer that? How many could come up with some justification for taking it? We could, but He says, no, my treasure is not here, right? And is that a message also in the New Testament? Should we have the same attitudes towards the treasures of this world? It's certainly not something we should put our faith in or find our security in. Who is the only one that should take that place? God is the only one. He's the one we should seek. He's the one we should have. In fact, let's go to Matthew chapter 6. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, beginning in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, says it very plainly. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures where? In heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And Abraham is a good example of this, isn't it? What did God bless him with? Great herds. Did he bless him with a family eventually? Did he bless him with servants? Did he bless him with? He blessed him greatly. But was that where his security was? Is that where his desire was? No. Because if it was, then when somebody comes and says, I will give you the treasures of these cities, he would have said what? Yes, that's why I'm here, right? Aren't we here just to amass more and more stuff? That's what I'm told every time I turn on the TV. Every commercial says what? What do I need to be happy? Stuff. What do I need to be secure? Stuff. What do I need to be somebody? Stuff. But is that true? I don't want to make you raise your hand, but let's be honest. How many of us have too much stuff? So, yeah, and what does it get us? Is that why we feel secure? Is that why? It shouldn't be, should it? We should be laying up our treasures in heaven. Now, is it bad that God blesses us with so many things? No. But let it be God who blesses us, not because it's our desire and what we're striving for and what we want. In fact, look what it says, verse 24. No man can serve two masters, for either you will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold the one, despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. You can't serve the things of the world. You cannot live for the things of the world and also live for God, because they will conflict. And when they conflict, you're going to have to choose. And since the Garden of Eden, what have we proven about mankind? Which one do we tend to choose? Yeah, the tree or God, right? The thing of the world or the things of God. And it will become a conflict. It will become difficult, so you cannot do it. That's why he goes further and says, therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor yet for your body, what you shall put on. Is not life more than meat, and the body than raiment? And again, think about Abraham. He's still living in a country that is not his, right? He's living amongst people that are not his people, right? How easy is it to say, you know what? If I had more weapons that they're offering me here, if I had more gold, if I had more silver, if I had more things, I could be far more secure for God in this country. In fact, they went through a famine, didn't they? How could he say, well, I wouldn't have to go down to Egypt if I had more stuff, right? I'm just protecting myself. I'm just trying to accomplish what God wants here, aren't I, by getting all this stuff? What did God make very clear to him? Now, if you need it, I will what? I'll provide it. Don't seek these things as your security, as your desires. Don't seek these things, but if God blesses you, what do you say? Thank you. And if he doesn't give it to you, what do you say? Thank you. Be content with what you have, right? So we have to learn. And that's the thing. Came down to Abraham was content with what God has provided. Should we also? Yeah. Because why? Let's go on down. Verse 32. For after all these things do the Gentiles seek. See, that's the way the world thinks, right? We have to let go of the way the world thinks. The world thinks it always needs more. For your heavenly Father knows that you have need of all these things. He knows how much we need. He knows when we need it. Will a good father take care of his children? will the great Godfather take care of us? Yes. And that frees us up to do what? But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take their own thought for tomorrow. For the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. We don't know what tomorrow is, but we know God will take care of it. And Abraham sitting there that day, faced with that decision of take all that stuff or not, said, I'm going to focus on just serving God and trusting God and let tomorrow take care of itself. Good choice? Excellent choice. In fact, let's go to 1 Timothy. Paul notes that not only is it a bad idea to get our focus off God in that way, but actually the riches can become a snare. Can't they? Could they have been for Abraham? Yeah. If all he worried about was, building an empire there, that would have been a problem, wouldn't it? In fact, look what it says in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. You want to be successful? You want to have a good life, full of peace and happiness and joy? Seek to do the right thing all the time and be content with what God provides. How true is that? Can you imagine living your life every day completely content? Nothing to complain about? Nothing to worry about? Just like, I know I've done the right thing. I'm right with God. And I'm content with what I have. Boy, what a load off that would be, wouldn't it? And does God offer us that? Yeah, he does. Verse 7, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. Don't anybody here starving to death. We're okay. I bet everybody here has too many pairs of shoes. We're okay. No, what?
I said not Sam.
No, not Sam.
It's just the right number.
That's right. Verse 9. But they that will be rich. And it's their desire, not those who are rich, but those who desire to be rich. That becomes their goal. What happens? Fall into temptation and a snare and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. I love his writing, don't you? Seems like he's laying it on, but he's just telling it straight. This is just where it leads, doesn't it? For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But you, O man of God, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, endurance, and meekness. Fight the good fight of faith. That's our goal. That should be our desire. And that's what we see Abraham doing. He said, I'm not going to be ensnared here. I'm not going to fall into this trap of desiring things. By the way, who had fallen into this trap? Lot. Lot and his family have already fallen into this trap, haven't they? We know how their story ends. And they've already fallen into the trap of the leisureness of Sodom and the riches of Sodom and the things of Sodom and all the things going on, to where they're willing to a blind eye to the sin going on around them, and because they want to keep their position, want to keep their wealth, want to keep their things of the world, and they find themselves what? In a trap. Abraham does not fall in this trap because he's willing to say, I will just trust the Lord. Can we do the same thing? But neither of those are the point of the story. The key point here is the key here is what Abraham is most concerned about. He's not concerned about falling into a trap. He's not concerned about being led away from God and not trusting Him in His security. If you look at what he says, his number one concern is his witness, his testimony. He knows even if the riches don't entrap him, even if they don't move him away from God and his faith remains still, it's what the world thinks that matters. And does what the world think matter? And if you don't think it does, consider the story of Job. What did Satan try to play God with? What did he try to get him? What was the hook? The only reason Job worships you is because he is blessed. And how many times does the world look at it that way? The only reason they follow God is because their life is good. The only reason they follow God is because they got so much stuff. The only reason they follow God is because they're rich. You just leave that open, don't you? And should we ever do that? And Abraham makes a very wise decision here. He's listening to God here and just like, hey, no. Even if those two things don't come true, I am concerned about how God looks. And if you make me rich, you could say to everybody around that you have made me rich. You're responsible. You're the one who blesses, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. When they look at me, I only want them to see God. Now, Paul very much knew this as well. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 9. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 11. Now, I don't know how much you remember about the church in Corinth. Paul spent a lot of time there working with them, getting them set up, getting them structured. The whole time he was there, he was a tent maker by trade. And he spent 18 months. That's a long time for him. Setting up the church there. And as soon as he leaves, the place starts going downhill. They start infighting amongst each other. They start doing all kinds of stupid stuff. So he has to write this first letter to them. And he admits in the second letter, this was harsh. This was hard. But look what he says here in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 11 and 12. Talking about his work there and giving them the gospel, and he and his team as they worked with the people to establish the church. If we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing if we shall reap your carnal things? He says, now listen, if you have a donkey and you make it work, are you going to feed him? Yeah. Right? If you have a servant, they do work for you, are you going to pay them? Yeah, so the fact that God sent me down to you to work with you and give you all these wonderful spiritual benefits of knowing God and serving God and anything like that, would it be a weird thing for me to ask you to pay me? No. He makes that point, right? But he never did. And kind of like Abraham, it made sense that he get paid, right? For going back and getting all their stuff, at least a portion of it, 50% of it or 25%. Didn't it make sense to at least get some of it? That's why he said give some to those guys, because it makes sense. But I'm not going to do it. And he didn't either. Verse 12. If other be partakers of this power over you, are not we rather? We had a right to it, to be paid. Nevertheless, we have not used this power, but suffer all things, lest we should hinder the gospel of Christ. He knew these people. He knew their heart. He knew that as soon as they started paying him, they would start taking credit. Oh, he's one of those. He's just there to get the money. He just tells us what we need to want to hear so we can pay him. He's only there. He's surviving because we gave him money and we took care of him and take credit for it. No, he says, because of that, I took nothing the entire time I was there. I worked as a tent maker and then spent the rest of the time spreading the gospel because I don't want the gospel hindered. And we have to have that same attitude. It may not be money, maybe power or influence or things. Whenever we're working in the world, we got to make sure that we're not basically giving them a reason to think that they are benefiting us, that they are somehow responsible for our blessings, are responsible for what's going on in our lives, for the successes that God has had. Because who should be the only ones getting credit for what's going right in our life? God. And then we can glorify Him, and then we can testify to that. Once we start getting money, getting influence, getting power, getting popularity, getting those things, you start saying, I want those things from the world because I deserve it, the world can turn around and say, see what I made you? Can that be a problem? Yeah. Do we see sometimes that with entertainers? Do we see that sometimes with pastors who get big old bucks? Do we see that sometimes with evangelists and some others? Yeah. How long has that been going on? For a long time. The Bible even talks about it. Even back then, false prophets and others who were always about the what? Money. If you're about the gospel, make the gospel the thing, right? Abraham, it was about being a light in a dark world. And he said, I don't want that dimmed at all by seeking money for you. In fact, it's so important. Let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Starting in verse 7. Second Corinthians chapter 11, starting in verse 7. And again, this came up again. Between the first letter and the second letter, basically everybody said, we hate Paul. Paul's garbage. Nobody should listen to Paul. Paul's just an angry man trying to tell us what to do. They used the letter against him. And then they tried to say the whole time that he was only in it for the money, he was only in it for this, he was only in it for power, he was only in it for all those kinds of things. So he had to address that in the second letter. He was even like, I'm sorry I got to write the second letter, but you lousy Corinthians, you got to get your act together here, right? And look what he says, 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 7. Have I committed an offense in abasing myself that you may be exalted because I have preached to you the gospel of God freely? Does it offend you that I came and I took nothing? Because that became, it's like, well, see, now he took nothing. Oh, thinks he's better than us. Oh, you can't win with some people. Everybody figure that out? You can't win, but you can point it out, can't you? I didn't take anything. Verse 8, I robbed other churches, taking wages of them to do you service. No, he didn't have any money, but he was getting it from other churches, not getting it from Corinth. That's not fair, guys, but I did it. Why? So the gospel could get out. And when I was present with you and wanted, I was chargeable to no man. For that which was lacking to me, the brethren which came from Macedonia supplied. And in all things I have kept myself from being burdensome unto you, and so will I keep myself. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm never going to be a financial or any other burden to you. Why? As the truth of Christ is in me, no man shall stop me of this boasting in the regions of Achaia. Wherefore, because I love you not, God knoweth. I do love you, but what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off occasion from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, they may be found even as we. And the bottom line is, hey, I know they're going to attack me. I know they're going to keep saying this, but I am not going to give them an occasion. I'm not going to give them an opportunity. Paul, and this is not just in Corinth, everywhere he went, he was always so concerned about how he was portrayed, how he was perceived. How people talked about him and said what he was and how he was perceived by people who actually saw him do things. Because the only thing he cared about was what? Getting out the gospel. And he wanted nothing to hinder that gospel. That's why he also said in Corinth, the letter to the Corinthians, hey, I won't eat meat if that offends somebody. If that'll bring them to the gospel, right? I'll do anything to get you to listen. If anything is hindering you from knowing the gospel, I will gladly do whatever is necessary to get you the gospel. Even what? Giving up everything, right? Even getting no money at all from Corinth. Probably the richest by far city that he went to. Corinth was astronomically rich. Rome he hadn't been to yet. It was the only richer city in that entire region. So, but he said, I'm not going to do it because that would do. And again, how similar is that to Abraham? Abraham's saying the same thing. I will not. I'm letting go of the world's treasures that you are dangling in front of me, these shiny things. I'm not going to do it because, first of all, I want to make sure nothing gets in between my relationship with God, right? I can't serve those things and serve God. I'm not going to let them get in the way. If He gives them to me, fine. Anybody else? No. Second of all, I don't want to be ensnared to them, right? I don't want to start thinking that I need those things. And second and third of all, I want to make sure my witness is clean. That nobody can say, it was I who made you rich. I am the one that made you, blessed you. All our blessings from God. Can we actually say that today? Should we have that same perspective? Yeah. How can we do that? Well, how many of us have jobs? Who do we thank for that job? Yeah. Give God the credit. Don't pat yourself on the back and say, oh, because I'm so great, so wonderful, and everything. No. I always have to remember who provides, who gets all the credit, who in our job, at our job, should we always give the credit to? Because if we start giving it to ourselves or to our job or to our employer, then the world gets a little confused, doesn't it? And certainly should be seeking those things as our security and things, right? Okay. Beware of the way the world looks at these things, right? And make sure nothing gets in the way of the true gospel of Christ.